Welcome to another episode of the SCHA-MI podcast. My name is Alex Frankfort, Communications Manager at SCHA-MI. Today we are pleased to be joined by U.S. Representative Fred Upton from Michigan's 6th Congressional District. He is a longtime supporter and advocate for the cause, and we're very pleased to get the chance to speak with him today. Welcome, Congressman.
Now, Alex, you can call me Fred, but I'm delighted to be with you. This is a cause that we both believe in, and you know, it's one of these things that ought to be permanently reauthorized. It isn't. We have to go through this gambit every time, but it's always been bipartisan. And of course, for me, you know, a number of decades now in the Congress, I see firsthand the value of this program. But we're going to need you again. We'll need your ground troops when this thing gets rolling. But I look forward to getting it to the president's desk.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you've mentioned there that, again, you've been, a longtime congressman. You've had a lot of experience, at the federal and state level. Can you tell us about some of your experiences along the way, meeting with the folks at health centers, maybe in your, district back home, or just with the network at large? Can you tell us about, some of your favorite experience interacting and partnering with them?
Well, until COVID, I did something that maybe was a little unusual for a lot of my colleagues, but I believed in it from day one, and that is I visit a school every week, all levels, middle school, elementary school, pre-K, Head Start, college, high school, obviously. And I reflect back when I was in school in Michigan, I never had a legislator come to my class, and I just thought that it was important. You talk about community service, you talk about making a difference. You know, I'm not a lawyer. I never thought I'd ever run for any office. And I know that, see if I could open the door for kids across our district. So for 30 some years, there was not a week that went by. Usually, actually, I think if you average it out, sometimes I do 4 or 5 schools in a week, but it was an important thing to do. And when you walk the hallways, you talk to the teachers and the dedicated people that are there. And I've got a long history of my family members that have been teachers. My wife was a preschool teacher. My brother ran a math department out in California. My mom was a teacher. My sister was a special ed teacher, but we love kids. And it's so important. Kids can't learn unless they're healthy. And you also know, and we've learned this from COVID for sure, that if you've got an unhealthy child, particularly with something like that, boo, things are real trouble. So COVID changed it. I mean, we had some other issues like, Columbine and Parkland and those things. So security-wise, things changed a lot. You don't have as many open doors and, that type of thing. But COVID really shut the door on visits. And of course, even today, as we talk now in mid-May, there are still schools that are closed, only virtual learning, and that's been a real hardship, not only on families, but kids, teachers, particularly for areas that may not have broadband, and that's another issue, but that's not our focus today. But as it relates to school-based clinics, this may be the only place that kids could go. They may not have a family physician. Their parents may or may not have had health insurance. They may not have had a doctor. I had 2 kids, still do, but they're both out of school. But you want to make sure that they're going to be healthy. And in a lot of cases, whether they have an urban area, and for me, I've got Kalamazoo, or a relatively small rural area, and I got a lot of that in my district. My district's actually I think a little bit of a microcosm of the country in terms of urban center and then rural centers as well. I have 6 counties and everything in between, and they make a real impact. And so as you talk about this issue, it's always been bipartisan. I was tapped to be the Republican lead on this. I once served on the Education Committee. I now serve. I've always since the 90s, I've been on the Health Subcommittee. So this is an issue that our committee has jurisdiction of. We've never had a fight on this. You hear about Washington and partisan fights, and it's more toxic today probably than ever before, but this is an issue that frankly has brought us together. And as I walk, as I go to some of these clinics, and again, it's been a year and a half now since I've seen them personally, but
I know.
they're needed, and the parents appreciate it, and it makes indeed a real difference as we try to make sure that those kids are getting everything they can out of the learning experience, knowing that they have to be healthy and safe.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, so we all know it's easy to define that value for a parent, that their child is getting healthcare in their school. How would you describe the value and the impact for, other community members who, maybe it's not their kids that need to go to those health centers, but it's students in their, school district that are having that resource available, or taxpayers in their county. Why should they feel that their, resources are, going to see some return and see some impact on their local community?
Well, when you have kids, and you either drop them off at school, or they walk, or they take the bus, you want them to come home healthy. And just like in the workplace, I mean, particularly now with COVID, don't go to work if you're sick. I mean, people always said that about the flu. Wash your hands, do all these things. COVID is something else, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of schools actually went to virtual. Some never really opened. You get that, and so. But as a consequence, if you're a parent, you don't want your son or daughter to be exposed to something that can come back to roost at your house, either be, and COVID's taken young kids as well. I mean, they've died. We know that. My brother is an athletic director at a high school, and that particularly with contact sports, they delayed seasons. They moved seasons around. You got the contact. I mean, before you always had to worry about football injuries and that type of thing, and brain injuries with helmets. This is a whole new thing. Every kid's got to get tested. Schools, teachers, so. I mean, this is a new element, a new stress level that no one ever thought we'd experience a couple years ago. And so it just sends the signal. It's really a life jacket, a life preserver, I think, for a lot of those families, so that the parents, their siblings, the neighborhoods, they feel safer that in fact there's some ailment there. There's someone that's a medical physician is going to make a diagnosis and try to pave the way for that individual to recover.
Absolutely.
It also good habits. I mean, wash your hands. I mean, even though I was vaccinated, I waited my turn. It's hard for me to say this. I'm 68. I know I look like you, Alex. But I waited my turn till I was in Michigan, and until I was 65. I didn't want to jump ahead of people in the queue. My wife waited as well. But in the meantime, was wearing a mask, washing your hands, really big time social distancing, but just being very, very careful. And we all know people that have had this terrible disease. I think we all know people that died. I have for sure. I've got family members that have got COVID. Thank God they recovered. But it can be very, very frightening. And particularly for me, I've got two aging parents, a 91-year-old and a 97-year-old. And, they were absolutely frantic. Nobody could come to the house. I mean, it's, it's changed our way of life, let's face it. So we're looking to restore our way of life back to, where we'd like to be. But school-based clinics are an important piece of that as we try to snuff out this COVID thing and really make sure that our kids and communities are going to be safe.
Certainly. And yeah, as you touched on, there's the, physical problem with the pandemic that we're all dealing with and have these abilities to, protect ourselves to a certain extent, masks, social distancing. But we're obviously also seeing a rise in the emotional impact of the pandemic, especially on our young kids who, none of us have ever dealt with something like this, but the rest of us are adults and have this ability to, kind of compartmentalize and emotionally process these things. Is it a concern among you and your other colleagues in Congress that, this rise in mental health, issues and reporting on, issues that students are having across the state of Michigan and across the country because of these prolonged, pandemic situations? And can school-based health centers be a solution to that, do you believe?
Well, they can be. I mean, remember, they're medical personnel. They've had the training that I haven't. I don't know your background well enough to know if you had training on that or not. But it is, it takes a toll on all of us. I got a next door neighbor. I can see her house. We're doing this. I'm at my house, and she's right over here. And she had COVID. She's a small businesswoman. She runs a business, and it's a real hands-on approach. She had to shut things down. How does she pay the mortgage? How does she's a single mom. People up and down the street. So it has a mental toll, and especially when a child that's sick. I know of a young family, and they have a new baby daughter. She's now about 8-9 months old, and guess what? She tested positive, as did the parents. Thank goodness they didn't have overwhelming symptoms, loss of smell, that type of thing. One was a physician, and they got it from a babysitter who came by. So just as you and I know folks impacted by this, our kids do too. And it has an impact because they see the news, maybe we see a paper or a podcast or something like that. They know that this can be, for a while we were losing more than 1,000 Americans. Nearly, as we tape this, nearly 600,000 Americans have died. Most of us know someone, and that does have an impact, particularly when you're close to them, when they're neighbor, and you worry. And that's just an added stress that adds to just another straw on the back that may break to really impact someone and for them, kids younger than us, you said adults, it still impacts adults big time. You see some of these stories of people that have died, whether they be physicians or healthcare workers, are burned out. You look at our businesses, large and small, and just trying to keep those open. We had a small physician's office in one of my rural counties, and they didn't get the first round of PPP, the Paycheck Protection money. This was a doctor, and he was like, I don't know that I can stay open. I've got 12 employees. And, and some of my other colleagues talked about suicides of folks who missed out on that first round of funding, wondering how they're going to survive, and whatever, just the normal life tolls, taking care of elderly parents or kids. I mean, this is just a real burden, and yes, it impacts mental health, which is another reason why these school-based clinics can be important, particularly as one maybe gets singled out in a positive way to say they might need help. There's some counseling that may be available to really get them beyond that real hurdle.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, God willing, as we move out of the pandemic and put this all behind us, or as we're starting to, what are, if you don't mind us asking, what are your legislative priorities in terms of, helping to benefit, children's health? Do you have anything that's, in your office right now, or that you're working on with some of your colleagues, that can help improve that, or help provide additional solutions, or help to support the health center network? Is there anything like that you're working on currently?
Yep, that's a very good question. First of all, we're going to get this done. Again, as bipartisan support, yeah, I'll confess, we got some knuckleheads that like to vote no on everything, sort of know who they are, but I won't label them on our little podcast now. But I'd like to think that we can move this, routinely. But if you ask the broader question, When I chaired the Energy and Commerce Committee a few years ago, we have term limits, so after 6 years, I had to step down, but I still serve on the Health Subcommittee. But I pushed through legislation. It was literally the last bill that Obama signed into law called 21st Century Cures. This was a bill to speed up, expedite the approvals of drugs and devices. Those approvals were going overseas. We saw the investment going overseas. We know the problems with supply chains and all of that. And so this bill really brought it back. But as we look back now at these last 2 years with COVID, we have a couple of vaccines that have been approved in large part because of what we did with this 21st Century Cures. We would maybe be having a vaccine available now, but we took down a lot of the silos. And it was so exciting. Pfizer, the first one, and they felt pretty encouraged all along. They were actually able to produce it before it was approved. And the same thing with AstraZeneca. Sorry, that's my Amtrak training across the world.
Okay.
But I support Amtrak, so I'm glad he's on time. But in any case, we have those approvals because of that. We also invested $45 billion more for the NIH. So again, every family, we all know people with Alzheimer's and diabetes and lupus and all these awful diseases that we want to find a cure for, and we've made great progress. Cystic fibrosis, just sickle cell is a direct result, some of these real positive things. We're now, and it was bipartisan, we're now going back to update what we did. We're calling it Cures 2.0. And in the next month or so, we'll be unveiling the next talking paper, I guess you could say, or framework of a bill to really, as we listen to researchers and to the healthcare folks and pharmaceutical groups and patient groups, what more can we do? And there's a lot of good ideas. One is, as we learned with COVID, particularly in minority communities, they felt that they were outside they weren't as much in the trials as they should be. I mean, a whole number of things involving diversity. Let's be using real world evidence. Let's take advantage of broadband in the way that we can communicate with each other. There's a good number of things that we can do, which is what this bill will do. And I have to say that President Biden is very much a part of this. And he was when he was vice president. Remember, I said Obama signed it into law. He was vice president then. And we worked, we included what we call the Bo Biden, his son, Bo Biden Cancer Moonshot, $1 billion for brain cancer that we included in that bill. We're going to be including, he's got another initiative called ARPA-H, and this is to really set up a special research arm, probably within the National Institutes of Health. But we're going to have a real focus on rare diseases. I got to tell you, it breaks our heart. More of us, it breaks our heart when you see these childhood diseases. I mean, parents are supposed to outlive their kids. And when they have some of these awful diseases, it just breaks your heart. I mean, that's why we're Americans, and what can we do to help?
Mm-hmm.
Bill is going to do that. And there's going to be a focus particularly on kids. We just now have seen some of these vaccines approved for kids under 16. So that's for the first time. We're expecting that most schools around the country will in fact be back to regular, I'll call it regular order, but back in the classroom come fall because of the approvals of these vaccines that need to be done to make sure that not only are they safe, their families are safe, their teachers are safe, and that we can move forward. And we also know that it's not like the polio vaccine. One polio vaccine and you're good for life. Until we really conquer this, you're likely going to need a booster, probably after 8, 10, 11 months. And so, again, the research is moving forward, but we got to make sure that it's available. We're getting people for the first dose and the second dose if you're Pfizer or Moderna, but you're going to need you're going to need a booster, probably if you had it early, probably before fall really hits us, or the leaves turn. And, we'll have a couple of generations of those until maybe we get to the final stage where it'll be like something like polio or smallpox. So
Mhm.
there'll be a real focus on that, and obviously our kids are important and they're part of this us too.
Yeah. So how can, our listeners, which are largely our folks and friends around the student-based health center network, how can they support all these efforts and these legislative priorities that you've been speaking on? How can they support you?
So a couple of things, Alex, and I didn't do my homework over the weekend. I confess I don't have a dog, so I can't say my dog ate my homework.
There we go.
Died, so that was really a sad day. They should, with the homework that I missed was, so we have a bill, HR. You probably know what it is, so this is how I ask you a question now. What would really be good is if the folks that are watching this call their member of Congress, Republican or Democrat, and say, call your congressman and tell them to co-sponsor HR. You know the answer, right? Mm-hmm. What is it? You know the bill number?
I don't know if I've heard the bill number yet. I'll link to it though in our posts and in the.
That was important because that's what gets the leadership's attention. Republican, you have X amount. You have 125 co-sponsors. They go, oh, it must be good, and especially if they're bipartisan. So,
yeah.
All my days, I have worked to be bipartisan. Now, there's not a bill that I've worked on that I haven't. I'm a Republican that I haven't tried to reach out to get a Democrat in support of, and that's why we have closely divided government. This is something that should not be partisan. And at the end of the day, we want to show that. And once you're a co-sponsor of a bill, guess what? You're going to vote for it. You don't have to worry about it when you whip through things to get things done. When we passed Cures, 21st Century Cures, was a 3-year project. We passed it 392 to 26. And I can tell you that, and we had a lot of co-sponsors, we didn't have to worry, but we almost lost. We almost didn't get it done. It took every single day to get it to President Obama by the time that he left office to get it done. And this is a bill that I'd like to think will get done way before then. But again, to show that, it'll come up. It won't be debated a long time on the House floor. We have so many bills that we deal with. They bring this up a little bit inside baseball, but under suspension of the rules, which means no amendments. But instead of passing by a majority vote, it has to pass by a 2/3 vote. And right now, we've got some knuckleheads that are opposing just about everything. So that's why co-sponsors are important, because they're going to be for the bill. But the other thing is, you want us to get our work done. People, as I find out, don't really care. Voters, constituents, don't really care if you have an R or a D next to your name. They just want the job done. Most people aren't a Democrat or Republican or Independent Party. They're frustrated. And this is something that ought to be a gimme. But much of a golfer, but I would like to think that this is a gimme. That you can just get it done. But that's why the grassroots are important. So particularly the good people that are watching this today say, darn it, I better call my member of Congress. It's pretty easy to find on a website and just say, weigh in. So that's your message to help us, help everybody to get this thing done.
Yeah, that's terrific. We're happy to hear that, and we're happy to help. So thank you again, Congressman Upton. I don't have any additional questions for you today. If you have, any other, thoughts and points that you want to leave us with, I'll give you the floor right now. But otherwise, we so appreciate your time today.
Yep. Well, me too, Alex. It's good to see you. Thanks for all that you do. And it's again, this is not a new concept. We're not breaking the egg here, but we're just getting it done.
Absolutely. Thank you again. We appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Look forward to it. Thanks.